Africa, Transhumanism, and the Magic Mushroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here for the first time in South Africa. I came all the way from Detroit, Michigan.
Welcome!
Been trying to get down this far in Africa for several decades, so this conference was just heaven sent. I'd like to thank all the organizers, everyone, the ladies standing at the door, the security at the front, the tech people, everybody. So since I only have a little bit of time, this is a 4-hour presentation, and I only have an hour, I'm going to run through some things very quickly. But since being here at the conference, my talk has changed just a little bit. I'm still getting the transhumanistic part of it, but I just wanted to address a few of the things that were said earlier, basically during Julian's talk. And he talked about the difficulty and problems of the mindset of the West, and how I want to actually try to look at this as from an earlier vantage point. I think folks were talking about the time of Rome, but this goes back much further, the problems of the psyche of the West. And it goes back to when prehistory was the claim to fame. It's prehistoric. It's a prehistoric problem. It's not a modern problem. And we can't solve it in a modern way because we can't fix the problem if you don't understand really where the problem came from. And it's called the Iceman's inheritance. And what that is that the people of Europe were trapped in the last ice age. And there's a difference between what they call the northern cradle and the southern cradle. And being trapped in the ice age, fear was paramount, meaning that the basic problem of the man of the West is fear of starvation. And I believe that Khalil Gibran said, "It's not fear of thirst when your well is full, a thirst that is unquenchable," meaning that nothing will ever be enough. No amount of money, no amount of pleasure, no amount of science and understanding will ever fill the void of that infancy in the ice. And that's really what it's about. Let me put a scenario together for you. If you have in the north, in Europe, a group of people who are a family living together. At that time, polyandry was practiced. In other words, several men in a setting with maybe 1 or 2 women. And we juxtapose that to the South, where polygamy was in the forefront. Children were a blessing. Abundance was there. It even goes into the way we regulate time between people who are in the southern cradle, or island people, and the people of the north. So why would you only want 2 women if you're in the north? Because if you have too many women, what happens? You have too many children. If you have too many children, what happens? Too many mouths to feed. So what they used to do was they would take the girl children. If a boy child was born, you would take the boy child, and he'd be with you to help hunt, to help defend the home from hostile animals, other hostile families who want to take what you have because they're in the same predicament, a lack of food. But if you had a girl child, you say, "Oh man, another girl, what are we going to do?" They take the girl children out and either just let them die in the ice or feed them to the wolves and things like this because you couldn't have too many women. And if it's a little boy, until he's established himself, they said you'd have sex with him too, because he couldn't protect himself, because mammals are organized in the male-dominant hierarchies. those with the strongest muscles, the longest fangs, rule. They impose themselves on everybody else. So you have this difference in the way things are seen as far as the earth is concerned. You're not looking at the earth as a loving mother who is providing us with everything that we need. If you're on Fiji, or what the other presenter was saying when he was in Bali, he said he walked around for months and food was everywhere, just a bit. Mangoes and ice cream food. I didn't even know it was ice cream food. If you could get it cold, it's probably great. Warm ice cream. But in the southern cradle, or in places, island people, you would have abundance. Children are a blessing. The world is good. Our rituals aren't to invoke the sun to come back. Please come back. On bended knees, sun, please come back. Sun worship. In the vein of the sun, if it doesn't come back, we're going to have a problem in a couple of months because we're going to starve to death. Time was different between the southern cradle people and the people of Europe. That's why today, when you have a job, the biggest thing is being on time. The job at 8 o'clock, Bob, why weren't you at your desk? It's 8 o'clock. And that's why when the conquistadors, and I'm going to just use that as a blanket term, when they moved out of Europe into other places and they wanted other people to work, they say, well, these people don't have a work ethic. They're lazy. We told Bob to be here at 8 o'clock and it's 11 now. Because they didn't have the same type of work ethic, because trapped in the ice age, you have a very short planting season once you understand how to plant. Meaning that, okay, September 14th is the day we got to plant. We got to make sure these plants are in line, and we got to make sure they survive, because we only got a very short growing season. So you got to be on time. But in the southern cradle, hey, you want to plant something this year? Let's do it next year. Just grab a couple of mangoes, a couple of bananas. We'll do it when we feel like it. Because you can plant any time of the year if you want to plant. Or you can just eat the fruit that's available. It had to do with lack. If you were one of those guys in the house with the other 15 guys and 2 women, and everybody's sitting around cold, around a little fire, and you went out, you walked 5 kilometers out to the frozen river. You had your trusty rock and your trusty sharpened stick, and you sit there for 2 hours and you broke the ice. Then you stayed there for another 4 hours waiting for a fish to come. And when you finally caught a fish and you went back home and you standing there with your fish, and there's 17 other people there saying, that's a nice fish, George. Aren't you going to share? George says, no, this is my fish. Nobody can have it. If you come over in this corner where I'm at with this fish, I'm going to kill you. Whereas George in the southern cradle says, hey, you want to go fishing? Yeah, let's put together the fishing song, get everybody together, we'll get the canoes together, we'll put 50 canoes out in there, we'll beat the water, and the women can have the traps, and we'll drive 10,000 fish to the shore and have a big feast. George, you tired of eating fish? Yeah, I'm tired of eating fish. What about you? Oh man, what are we going to do all the rest of this fish? I don't know. But it doesn't matter. Because we got so much food, it's not a big deal. So when the Europeans came out with Iceland's inheritance to the rest of the world, they brought that type of mentality. The indigenous people miscalled Indians in the United States. When the Europeans first came to the United States, they welcomed them in. They gave them food. They made sure Thanksgiving in the United States, because they were starving to death and eating each other, and the Indians came and gave them food. This is the problem. And I'm not saying it to be disrespectful, but this is just what it is. If we're not going to be truthful, then it doesn't even matter to say the things that we say. You can't deal with the problem until you understand what the problem is. It's fear of starvation. And it is in the genes. This went on for 30,000 years. After that, the same type of mentality. So, when we look at things like ayahuasca, and you call it medicine, you know, and this medicine plant, and the healing, things like that, I'm here to speak about mushrooms, hallucinogenic mushrooms. Mushrooms are not medicine. Mushrooms are magic. I have a couple of small caveats to give to you before I really start into my presentation. And that's, it's not arrogance in what I do, trying to take higher and higher doses. I'm not encouraging anybody to take a higher dose than you feel is necessary for you to do whatever you need to do. Because I've been called irresponsible. What reason would you have to take 30 grams? When I get inside of my presentation, why I think that the next level of human existence will be pushed several different ways, but two major ways. It will be an organic singularity and a technological singularity. Yeah. And you have people like Ray Kurzweil, Hugo de Garis, Hans Moravec, and others who are part of the singularity movement, who are hell-bent having conferences. You paid I don't know, 100 rand to get in here. I don't know how much it is in dollars, but their conferences are 1,500 US, you know, elite conferences on the technology of the mergence of human consciousness with the machine. They're hell-bent, moving forward. Talking about downloading into computers, speeding up the processes, slowing it down, becoming immortal inside of that. And then you have that technological singularity, and you have what I call organic singularity. Because I'm a fan of somewhat of the Stone Age theory, I believe this is what helps bring us into the human consciousness. And that goes back, they make finds every year. But actually the oldest one is down at the Cape. And it's twice as old as anything in Europe. It's 100,000 years old, right down the road here. But that's not popularized, or it's not said, because Africa is always marginalized. When they talk about hallucinogens, even up to a very recent point, they say that Africa is sparse in hallucinogens. Africa has the most undiscovered hallucinogens than any place on Earth. This is still headquarters, regardless of what folks think, because this is where the human form comes from. This is where the role of the soul is. This is where the 2 arms and 2 legs and a head standing upright comes from. Because everything else died off. We were contemporaneous with Homo habilis and Homo erectus. Man goes back millions of years. We just haven't found the things yet. So you can't say, oh, 7 million years. But every single year, they push it back. So let me move into my talk officially. There's a couple other things I want to hit along the way, but I want to move through this quickly. So thank you for your attention. And as, well, I don't know if you all know what was Arsenio Hall? Yeah. Okay. Well, he's back on TV. He's a host in the United States. He was kicked off TV for about 20 years and back on, but he used to say, in his first rendition of his show, he used to say, let's get busy, so right now let's get busy. It is my contention and the contention of many others who have taken a high dose of psilocybin mushrooms that this is a organic extraterrestrial technology that directed panspermia pushed by solar winds inside of comets deposit spores, which are one of the hardest things in nature, approaching the hardness of metal, percolated through comets, asteroids, into different solar systems, getting to a planet that is hospitable, finding the right temperature, the right food they sprouted, finding a entity that could utilize the information that was encoded in it, because there's something that came out basically in the New Age. The New Age was started by Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophists in the 19th century. And they talked about Akashic records, but it is the records of the Acacia, or the records of DMT, which are hyperdimensional, extradimensional, extraterrestrial. And these records span the galaxy. So, you know, this is theory like anybody else's theory is just as valid as the Big Bang. Yeah. That's a theory, changing in parallel universes. There's a lot of theories out. The Big Bang is the one that they put in the textbooks for, for 50 or 60 years or so. You know, Darwinism, theories. It's just as valid. You know, if you say the Earth is 4 million years, you calculate time by the Earth's movement around the sun, and you say the universe is 14 billion years old, how will you calculate time before you have Earth go around the sun to be able to say that it was 14 billion years ago, because you didn't have Earth, you didn't have the sun 14 billion years ago. So it's a theory. We're going to be talking about the Tesla Plateau each year. But as I said before, these aren't the oldest cave paintings that exist. The oldest cave paintings that we have records of on the Earth are right down the road at, just right down the road here. 100,000 years ago. And I don't usually read things in my presentations, but just real quick, because I'm not good with the names here of how you call the different places. But it says 100,000-year-old art workshop discovered in South Africa. You all know about that, right? Yeah, good. At Colombo's caves. Yes. They didn't just find the painting, they found the art studio with palettes, with the ochre painting them in shells. So that pushes back twice what that which was found in Europe, as far as the cognitive understanding of man and how we became truly cognitively man. They had jewelry. They had an evolution of the things that were from before, so they were truly modern human beings. But we're going to talk about, because my slides have the Tesla Plateau, since that's the oldest, at this particular time that we found, renditions of mushroom use on Earth. Man's relationship with cattle, because these mushrooms are prophylactic, meaning that they like to grow on dung. That's their thing. Elephant dung, camel dung, cow dung. But since man domesticated cattle, and he hasn't got around to domesticating elephants and other things, he kind of brought the mushrooms in the backyard. So these were some of the paintings, going back 7,000 years old. I had some video, but we don't have enough time to go through those. Here we have what they call mushroom shamans. And I'm not really a shaman term person, because shamans come from Siberia, and I believe people should be called what they are. If you are a Kung Fu, if you are a Babalawo, if you are in Sangoma, I believe you should be called that. But now this is a new term for anybody who's not a rabbi or a imam or a priest. It's, I guess, more politically correct to call them a shaman than it is the witch doctor or the medicine man, you know, or the hoodoo person. But these are the mushroom-headed people. The people proved what they saw under the influence of hallucinogens. And we know that there was a difference because I believe Pablo Picasso, when he saw these renditions on the wall, said that we have created nothing, because these paintings were correct in usage and color, and all these different types of things dealing with the animals that they saw in nature, and produced and reproduced those on the cave walls. And then when they produced those other things under the influence, they produced what they saw. At a time when no person on earth had a pair of shoes, not even sandals, they were drawing people with helmets and boots. Now you just don't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to draw a guy with some boots on. You don't have any conception of what a boot is. That's like one day we were sitting around, every house on earth is a hole in the ground or in a cave or some sticks tied together, and you just walked out one day and said, you know what, George? Let's build a pyramid. Mike says, not you, Mike. Mike says, what's a pyramid? You say, well, it's you take a square and you bring it together in the middle, and you bring it up so high so that it stands up and doesn't fall down. So, well, how are we going to do that? Let's take some mushrooms. But mushrooms is the way that they conceptualize how to produce pyramids, Tekken, these types of edifices. Temple-style hall temples. There was no pattern for these types of things. What they did was the pre-Kemetic, Kemet is the name for Egypt, pre-Egyptian priests, pre-dynastic Egyptian priests, going into novel states of consciousness, observed in the compendium of those novel states of consciousness, how one family chose to clothe themselves in reality, and that is called the family of Ra. Ra, Aset, Nebhet, Haru. What they saw in light in those realms, once they came out of their trip back to normal waking consciousness, they produced in stone what they saw in light in those areas of sojourn in those states of consciousness. Meaning that if you saw a pyramid in light, you said, oh, when I get back, I'm going to make one real good. I don't have no light I can work with. So let's make it out of stone. Because they have out of stone. These are the dancing shamans. We're going to move through these quickly. Dancing with mushrooms in their hands. This is what they believe the mushroom to be. It's kind of hard to see. They call it psilocybin nerei. We call it the tamarian blue. This is the bee shaman. And I believe this is the rendition of Kat, the ex-wife of Terrence McKenna. This is an actual cave painting, but I have one right behind it, which is an actual photograph of the cave painting. You can just actually see this one better and how it was rendered because of, because she drew it. It's easier to see. The other one is wearing out. As I said before, these mushrooms are craphylic. They grow on dung. This one's called hippopotamus dung. You know, and I think they really like hippopotamus dung because there's quite a bit of it. Now let me set this up real quick because it goes into the Sahara. The Sahara is now desert and it's encroaching into the arable land in Africa. I mean, into the usable land in Africa. What happened is, even up until about 2,000 years ago, the Sahara was still usable. We know that because Pliny the Elder, Roman historian, said that the Sahara and Egypt was the breadbasket of Rome. It drove the Roman soldiers. It kept them moving because this is where they got the grain from. Here in Egypt. That was the whole thing with Caesar, Mark Antony, and others coming into Egypt because of the grain ships. They wanted, because Cleopatra and her brother, or Cleopatra the Eighth, because there were 8 Cleopatras. Cleopatra the Eighth and her brother were feuding, and the grain wasn't flowing the way it should. So that's why Mark Antony and Caesar came and wanted to chastise them about the grain that moved. But we know that the Sahara was still green up to about 2,000 years ago. It had been becoming drier and drier over a period of a million years. When the hunters and gatherers on the Sahara moved from the great forest of Africa, because Africa was great jungle forest from the top all the way down here. Climatic changes came and things became drier and drier and drier. Now when you start with mushrooms, because this was the thing that everybody participated in. In other words, if you had a family group of 70 hunters and gatherers, and they were out gathering, the mushroom would ask you to pick it because it was visible. You know, it looked like it. I didn't want it. I was hungry. You try it. You know, you like it. You try it. You don't like it. But the mushroom, the psilocybin genus, is an adaptive advantage for human beings. At low doses, it imparts visual acuity. In other words, it makes you see better. So that if you're a hunter-gatherer and there's a flower that has a tuber on it 100 yards away, and you're 150 yards away, if you took psilocybin, you could still see it, but your vision was only contained within 100 yards. In martial arts, in which my first areas of mushroom use were inculcated into me through martial arts. All martial arts, ancient martial arts, traditional martial arts, use hallucinogens. That includes the Shaolin Temple. You know, they used amanitas. How else do you think they were flying all over the place and, you know, 100 spears come at him, he blocks all of them with his shirt. They were all mushrooms. Shaolin means young forest, young pine forest where the mushrooms grow, where we get our power. What do you think when the guy did projected his chi at the other kung fu master from the rival school, and he... That's because they were mushrooms. Same thing in Japan. I know all of you know that ninjutsu came out of mushrooms. The Tingle type, the goblin mushroom, the goblin mountain mushroom. The mountain goblin demons came down when they were in Indonesia, Sila, connected to mushrooms. In India, Kalari Payet, coming from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, utilized soma, which was the mushroom brew. That was originally the blue mushroom. It was changed to the red mushroom when Gordon Wasson said it was the red mushroom. But that was the whole smoke, CIA smoke screen. We'll get into that when we get a chance. This is Medonetic, what they call hieroglyphics. And what we have here is writing, picture writing. You're here. But that's not the secret of what Kemet is, because Kemet was built on mushrooms. It was built on the mushrooms drying up in the Sahara. Because what was the significance of ancient Kemet? what was the significance of ancient Egypt? The significance was that it was the only available water source in the desert, the Nile River. That's what created the city-state. It brought everybody together in one spot. But before that, when the Sahara was still green, you didn't have to be in that one spot. You didn't have to have a big city where everybody crowded on top of each other, because you could go here, there's water, every place there's water. But when the Sahara started drying up and people started moving, they started to move into the only available water source, and that was the Nile River, and that built that civilization. Now, when the mushrooms started drying up on the Sahara, there was a time when this whole room would have mushrooms, and we'd have a shared experience. We sit down around the fire, knock down 20 grams, before a big hunt. And in the middle of the fire, a being descends into the middle of the fire, steps out. He has the head of a bird and the body of a man. His name is Haru. And Haru says, you know, if you all go to the mountain, you'll find good food. But only stay there a week because there's going to be a big flood. Then you say, okay, well, we're going to try this out. They go, they find the food, they leave there's the flood. Okay, well, this guy's good. Everybody knows it. Because we've all experienced it. It's an experience, it's not a belief. But when the mushrooms dried up, we couldn't use them as often. When the mushrooms dried up, everybody couldn't use them. So what happened is, okay, hey, we'll get the oldest guy and the oldest lady, we'll give them the 20 grams, and then they'll tell us what Haru said, which way to go, how to avoid floods, how to find food. And they would come back and tell the rest of the group that Haru said, we need to go west. They said, well, if Haru said go west, we're going west. And that was good for that generation, because that generation had the experience. That generation knew there was a Haru because they saw an Haru. The African mindset doesn't distinguish between what you call natural and supernatural. There's no difference between the two. What you experience is real. There's no such thing as a hallucination. So, when those two people took the mushroom to let everybody else know it was good, when those people started dying out, and only the two people were taking the mushrooms, and the next generation came, and they said, Haru said, let's go west. And they're like, who's Haru? He said, well, he's the guy who has a bird head and a man's body, and he comes down, descends out of the sky in the fire, and steps out of the fire and tells us which way to go. And they're like, yeah, you know, it's 10,000 in DC, but I got a bridge in Brooklyn you can ride. So it moved from a direct experience to a belief. And when those people moved into killing, the regular people weren't taking hallucinogens. They weren't taking the acacia. They weren't taking the blue water lily. You know, they was smoking opium and had some oat corn brought in some coca leaves too, but the main hallucinogens for the highest priesthood was the psilocybin mushroom. And the psilocybin mushroom, when that became scarce, the psilocybin mushroom taught them how to utilize the acacia and the Syrian root. It said that I can't be here with you, but this will get you through until I can come back in the 80s. So what we have, this is the table of the food of the gods. These are mushroom caps because they're performing the ceremony of opening of the mouth of the Christ or the mummy. But you see Anup, who is the embalmer, he's the one that leaves you in death. The jackal takes decaying matter and makes it life-giving flesh. That's why jackals, they don't eat fresh meat. They want it to rot a little bit. So as your physical body, your cot rots, the jackal comes and gives it living flesh. It's all symbolic. But the secret is you have the mushroom glyph. It's called the kabit, the shadow, the shade, the land of darkness, the land of potential. What Anoop has here, if the picture was a little bit brighter, you can see that what he's doing, he's holding a mushroom. He's holding the stem of the mushroom. This is the cap. It's superimposed over in front of the mummy. And the reason why I take high doses is to become more than what I am. It's an exploration. It's a journey. It is a testing of my spirit and power against whatever comes, whatever forces come. My goal each time is to stand more and more and more, to take more and more and more. Now, the thing about psilocybin is that it has a high LD50, meaning that LD50 is this. How much of any compound can you eat 100 grams before it kills 50 of them? And the LD50 on psilocybin is approximately your body weight, meaning that you have to eat your body weight in one setting to kill yourself physically. Now that doesn't mean be irresponsible and sit up on the edge of that balcony because you can't fall off to kill yourself. Or stand in the middle of traffic, you know, you to knock down 10 grams or something like that. It doesn't mean you can't get killed. You want to be in a safe environment. And the doses that I'm talking about, you can't do anything anyway. I'm in Australia and the guys are saying, hey, you know, yeah, we had some shrooms and, you know, we had some MDMA and we had some weed and, you know, we drunk a fifth of vodka and we, you know, went in front of the TV and watched The Matrix and, you know. Watch The Matrix on 5 grams. But the thing is that high dose psilocybin, you can't do nothing to lay down anyway, on the bed or on the floor, and hold on so you don't fall off. So the mushroom is superimposed over the mummy. Here it is. And then you also have the mushroom glyph in the seated Ansar, or Osiris, or Wasil, the Lord of the Dead. This is mandala. I put some other things in here. This is a mandala, sand painting, the Tibetan sand painting, on the ground. What happened is, these are places, these are worlds, these are stargates. They took and three-dimensionalized through a computer this mandala, and when they put the algorithm through the computer to three-dimensionalize this two-dimensional structure, it built this. It has stairs going into, because this is where the high Buddhists go and study in the hyperdimensional realm, while you sit down here trying to figure it out. And I'm gonna move real quick. The carpet. Did you know that the red dye in the virgin carpet is Syrian root? It is the signature for when you take your hallucinogen and sit on the carpet. And that carpet three-dimensionalizes just as the mandala three-dimensionalizes. So, it becomes a mnemonic device, a device of memory, a device of journey. Meaning that people would take carpets and hold on to them generation after generation. Because the spirits of their ancestors lived in this part of the carpet. The unborn lived in this part of the carpet. The land of potential was in this part of the carpet. And so on and so forth, as many memories that you and your ancestors have and places that you and your ancestors go or strive to go to are included inside of this carpet. You take your hallucinogen at a high dose, sit on the carpet, and go into these different worlds. If you want to see your grandmother, you go and see your grandmother. If you want to see your teacher who has passed on, you go into the carpet and see your teacher who has passed on. That's this Syrian root, you all know about that. MAO inhibitor. Anybody know what that is? That's the Cenobite puzzle box from Hellraiser. You think it's a toy? You think Hellraiser was a toy? Puzzles, labyrinths, caves are places. That's why I want to get down to this cave and knock down 20 grams in that cage. Because I've been in caves where the walls become transparent. The characters animate. I'm gonna go back real quick, because I only got about 5 minutes. This, at 5 grams, you'll see that stuff wiggle on the wall. With intent. 5 grams of psilocybin, you look at this picture, they'll wiggle on the wall. At 15 grams, these folks will come off the wall. It's a DVD. At 25 grams, you dissolve and go into the wall. This is the technological legacy built by those who built the mushroom. Because, as I said before, it's an organic technology. This is technology. This is technology. This is technology. This is Osiris, the Lord of the Dead, called Ansar, or Wasir. He is in his mummified mushroom form. I put it beside the mushroom to show you. That's the mushroom. Disregard the arm. Disregard the head that was knocked out. And just take it is for what it is. Basic common sense. Doesn't have to be anything esoteric. Tomatoes are good for the heart because they're red. You got 4 chambers. You eat them. Basic common sense. The child's eye. We're going to move through this real quick. The circle within a circle. I laughed yesterday when I looked at what's on the floor there, the crystals and stones that they make, because they make the exact same thing. This is the symbol of Ra, the circle within the circle. Here, the glyph reads, Amen Ra, the circle within the circle. And I'm going to move real quick here. These are ear studs, showing that the people of Egypt understood each mushroom that were in the hallucinogenic mushroom that was in the area. That's the pineal gland. That's the great cow. Cow with blue spots. Blue, the Carillion blue. Azarin, symbolic of the pine tree, pine cone. That's in the Vatican. That's the mushroom found in the Vatican. That's Hari Hari, holy mushroom. And we go into all of the Indian renditions. That's Hanuman and Angi. Hanuman, the hero of the Ramayana, holding his mushroom, and Angi holding his mushroom. With a mushroom in the middle. 30 seconds. Okay, we went into Ahura Mazda, the Akbar sisters, Shango in West Africa, the double-headed axe, where there's lightning strikes, mushrooms grow. Thor, same thing, it's up north. The 9 worlds, I think it's coming out next week. Dark Elves. Into Darkness, I think it is. Okay, and I wanted to go into the tryptamines, melatonin. This is psilocybin. Psilocybin is the stable form. It's 4-phosphoroxy-N-dimethyltryptamine. Psilocybin is DMT. I don't know why folks keep saying, oh, it's very close to DMT. It's 4-phosphoroxy-N-dimethyltryptamine. When you eat it, it dephosphorylates, that top part falls off and becomes psilocin, which is less stable, but it's the Rolls Royce of I got 5 more minutes. You eat the psilocybin, it knocks that top part off, becomes psilocin, and the only difference between, well, I want to get into the methyl groups and the nitrogen groups on the, in relationship to methyl, but don't have time for that. But, you know, that's DMT. What's the difference? That oxygen molecule.
That's one.
DMT. It's the same thing. It's the only organic, ingestible DMT that you can get that we found there. Everything else is an alchemy, that is brain chemistry. It is an exogenous brain chemical, as opposed to an endogenous brain chemical created by the pineal gland. Ayahuasca is an alchemy. It came when people understood how to make fire and make a pot to hold water, and then formulate, put two things together. You have a person who's in between the ayahuasca you drink it yourself. The person who made it lets you make it yourself. There's nothing between you and this. Nature made it. And I'm not saying anything wrong about ayahuasca, I'm just saying that it's a newer system. The other things are newer systems. This was whole within itself when we encountered it on the grasslands of the Sahara 100,000 years ago. It was whole within itself. And the other one, I know people like a little salvia, San Pedro, things like that, but that's not brain chemistry. The DMTs are brain chemistry. And these are DMT synthesis. I wanted to get into the harmaline, and quinoline, which can be produced in darkness. Mandak Chia had a center that he created in Thailand so that you could go in the dark. And that's what caves were. They were places to pump the DMT, pump the quinoline. Because you no longer had light, you didn't have the light and dark fluctuation. Oh man, let's go through this real quick. Oh no. This is Easter Island, but moving those big statues was a job. But you know something? They had mushrooms too. Oh yeah. It's encoded. It wasn't for you people and me to know and understand. It was for an elite. And that's why in the 1950s, when Gordon Wasson went to Maria Sabina and they set up the whole CIA 1960s culture, it got away from it. Because Aldous Huxley and Thomas Malthus and Darwin, they were elitists, they were eugenicists. They wanted to decrease the population, have these things for them only. And I believe, I can't prove it, but I believe that's why Gordon Wasson switched over to Amanita muscaria when I think he knew that it was psilocybin, because the whole Indian epic is based around the cow and the reverence for the cow. And you can't get Amanita muscaria mushrooms from cow dung. You can't get psilocybin. Krishna is blue, just like this. And I wanted to talk about not the Mayan, not the Aztec, but the Olmec. But we don't have time for that. Moving through the last few, these are masks, these are African masks that also scarification. There's so much stuff on the body, the scarification. We're not the tattoo people, we're the scarification people. But as I was saying the other night, tattoos, when they were given, were the person would be under the influence of the indigent, the person giving the tattoo. And the person who put the tattoo on the person had to put on what was there. He couldn't just, oh, well, let me be creative again, make you swerve. No, he had to penetrate and vision what was actually there and reproduce that. And there was a guild of other tattooers. If you didn't reproduce what was there, they could see it, because they take the Alessandra and say, oh, you made a mistake, you didn't put this here or there. Thank you very much. I got a lot more, but
People.